Welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft, welcoming you to our live, local, 5 days a week look into all things Oakland County. Today, we'll be talking to political experts, attorneys, and more about topics interesting and important to people like you right here in Oakland County. Let's get into today's headlines on our website at civiccentertv.com on our local news page. Our top story today is from Sarah Rahal at the Detroit News. Michigan adds 16,137 cases and 137 deaths from COVID-19 in the past week. The state experienced its first case decline in 5 weeks as the state added just over 16,000 cases and 137 deaths from COVID as of Tuesday, including totals from the previous 6 days, according to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Michigan reported an average of about 2,305 cases per day over the past 7 days, a slight decrease from 2,822 cases per day about a week prior. On August 2nd, the state said it added 20,713 cases and 106 deaths from the virus in the previous week. On Monday, the state reported that 969 adults and 22 pediatric patients were hospitalized with confirmed infections, an increase from last week's 917 adults and 29 children. Inpatient records were set on January 10th of this year when 4,580 adults were hospitalized with COVID-19. On Monday in Michigan, about 6.4% of the state's hospital beds were filled with COVID patients, and there was an average of 1,126 emergency room visits COVID-19 related per day within the state. That compares with 24% of hospital beds and 2,889 daily emergency room visits due to the virus in the first week of 2022. Between July 29th and August 1st, about 21% of Michigan's COVID-19 test results returned positive. That's among those that were reported to the state, of course. There could be more, or that number could be less based on those that had not reported to the state, counting that into the metrics. That 21% is only those that have been counted thus far at the state level. All Metro Detroit health departments are following CDC guidelines that recommend indoor masking for public settings as well as K-12 schools, as the rate of infection has grown from medium to high on the CDC scale. Tuesday's additions bring the state's overall totals to 2,708,622 cases and 37,671 deaths since the virus was first detected in the state of Michigan in March of 2020. 18 counties out of Michigan's 83 this week are considered at a quote-unquote high level for the increased burden on healthcare or severe disease. Those include Baraga, Calhoun, Dickinson, Houghton, Iron County, Kalamazoo County, Kalkaska, Keweenaw, Lucy, Macomb, Marquette, Mason, Menominee, Monroe, Oakland, Oceana, Washtenaw, and Wayne counties. Another 35 counties have a medium transmission level, according to the MDHHS. Case counts are still well below January, when the state set a high mark with more than 20,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 per day. In Michigan, variants of the virus have moved at a high rate, proving more contagious than past variants and infecting vaccinated and unvaccinated residents alike. A new iteration of the Omicron variant, subvariant BA.5, is now the dominant strain across the country, and thanks to its elusiveness when encountering the human immune system, the size of the wave is unclear because most people are testing at home or are not testing at all. Again, that goes back to metrics from the past week in the state, where 21% of tests were returning positive. That's just among those that are reported to the MDHHS, reported to the state, reported to local health departments that then, of course, report back to the state of Michigan on these metrics. Those numbers could be more, those numbers could be less, depending on the results of those at-home tests that are maybe not being reported to the state or to local health departments. Antibodies from vaccines and previous COVID infections offer limited protection against the BA.5 subvariant of Omicron, leading experts to call it, quote unquote, the worst version of the virus that we've seen, and closed quote. In Michigan, 308 cases of a rare inflammatory condition in children linked with the coronavirus has been reported to the CDC. About 63% of kids with the syndrome are admitted to intensive care units, and there have been 5 deaths total thus far in relation to this inflammatory disease, which again is rare. As of Monday, 38 outbreaks were reported over the prior week. The majority, 23 of those, were in long-term care facilities and senior assisted living facilities as well. The state is tracking 366 ongoing cases considered outbreaks. About 66% of state residents, or 6.6 million people, have received at least one dose of a vaccine. About 60% are fully vaccinated, and more than 238,000 children between 5 and 11 years old in Michigan, or 29% of that demographic, have received at least their first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. More than 3.2 million individuals, or 35% of the eligible population, have received a vaccine booster in Michigan, and 5.6 million are fully vaccinated. U.S. regulators authorized the first COVID-19 shots for infants and preschoolers, paving the way for vaccinations to begin this week. The Food and Drug Administration's panel's unanimous recommendation that the shots from Moderna and Pfizer for children between 6 and 5 years old, are between 6 months old and 5 years old, are safe and effective. Also making headlines on our local news page from Eric D. Lawrence at the Detroit Free Press, countywide transit millage is moving closer to a reality here in Oakland County. Transit advocates could be about to get their wish here in Oakland County. County commissioners are scheduled to decide at their Wednesday Board of Commissioners meeting on whether to put a 10-year countywide transit millage on the November 8th ballot. If the board moves the measure forward as expected, voters would choose whether or not to end a patchwork approach to public transportation in Metro Detroit's second most populous county. It would mark a dramatic shift in the conversation that swirled around Metro Detroit Transit earlier this year when the Auburn Hills City Council voted to pull that community out of the Suburban Mobility Authority for Regional Transportation, or SMART, system, an effort later thwarted by a circuit court judge, but which was seen as symbolic of the region's transit woes. Megan Owens, executive director of the advocacy group Transportation Riders United, said, quote, "It would be the biggest transit expansion in decades," end closed quote, for Metro Detroit if voters ultimately approved the measure. She acknowledged that there is still work ahead that may need to be done to make that happen, but said it's a matter of showing residents in areas not currently served by the SMART system the benefits of transit. Commission Chairperson Dave Woodward, who has been working behind the scenes for months on the proposal, said the goal of the millage would be to make transit service accessible across the county, something that's currently not a reality. Quote, "I think there's a recognition that we need to provide a base level of service so that people who have no other options can get to places they need and want to go. People who need to get health care can get to healthcare providers. People who need to get jobs can get to jobs or get to interviews," and closed quote, said Woodward, a Democrat from Royal Oak. He continued on by saying, quote, "It's critical to our economy. It's critical to quality of life. It's really critical to resiliency across our county," and closed quote. The millage, which is expected to raise $66.2 million in the first year, would replace 3 existing transit millages, including the expiring SMART millage in areas where that's in place, and provide more than $20 million for new services, according to the chairperson Woodward. The 0.95 mil measure would fund the county's SMART service, the most visible transit system outside of the city of Detroit, as well as the North Oakland County and West Oakland County Transportation Authorities, as well as the Older Persons Commission's transportation. The millage would provide $37.9 million toward current transit services, with the bulk of that funding going towards SMART. But Woodward said it would not be currently correct to say that all of the county would be within the SMART bus system. However, the measure would eliminate so-called opt-outs in the county, jurisdictions that, for example, don't participate in or provide property tax revenue to fund SMART. Having communities, including well-to-do locations such as Bloomfield Hills, that are located along major corridors but are not part of the transit system is one of the major impediments, according to transit advocates. Quote, "The boundaries of whether we provide service to a person just because you live on the other side of the street in Oakland County goes away, because all the dollars will be raised and then collected by Oakland County and then contracted for service," and close quote, said the chairperson. Instead of discussions about whether some communities should provide service, the county-wide approach would move the conversation to how to improve transit everywhere in the county, according to Commissioner Woodward. The measure, should commissioners pass it, isn't guaranteed approved by voters, but Woodward indicated that he believes it will get enough support, describing it as an Oakland County plan to improve transit in Oakland County. Quote, "What makes this different from past efforts is that it takes the stakes of what we have, what's working, and taking what is working to scale," and closed quote, said Woodward. The millage would embark earmark $20.4 million for new and improved service, including additional paratransit coverage and new microtransit areas such as on-demand services, as well as new transit routes, according to information about the plan. It would also provide the local match funding that would allow Oakland County to tap into monies available through the federal bipartisan infrastructure law, according to Chairperson Woodward. The plan would put $7 million toward capital improvements in the transit system. The board meets at 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday at the Commission chambers in Pontiac. Meetings are also scheduled to be aired on the Board of Commissioners YouTube channel. To do that, just search Oakland County Board of Commissioners on YouTube. At the top of that search page, it should show up a link to their specific YouTube page where the live stream will be. A transit town hall hosted by Transportation Riders United and the city of Pontiac is scheduled for 6 p.m. on Wednesday at the Crowfoot. That's located at 1 South Saginaw Street in Pontiac. Again, that is 6 p.m. It's hosted by the city of Pontiac, as well as Transportation Riders United. That is at the Crowfoot, which is 1 South Saginaw Street in Pontiac, Michigan. Finally, making headlines on our local news page from Bridge, Michigan's Tracy Moriello, an extensive article about Michigan school mental health program that is set to expand with a $50 million boost. The last time Administrator Christina Hansen intervened in a school fight, she didn't have to say much. One of the students already knew what he should have done differently. Quote, "That would have been a perfect time to practice my breathing, but I didn't," end close quote, the student told her after a brief shoving match with another student in the cafeteria at Bark River Harris Junior High School in the Upper Peninsula. Quote, "I blew my lid," end closed quote. He had forgotten to use the tools he learned in Trails, a program his school adopted last year to help students manage emotions and make good decisions. With more exposure to the program and more practice using its techniques, he'll be able to calm himself before his behavior escalates, said Hansen, who was hired last year as the Bark River Harris School District's Student Success Coordinator. She runs programs to support students academically and behaviorally, including Trails, which stands for Transforming Research into Action to Improve the Lives of Students. Developed a decade ago at the University of Michigan, the program is now in about 700 schools and could be soon be in a lot more thanks to a nearly tenfold boost in state funding. The state school aid budget signed into law last month provides for $50 million in funding over the next 4 years. That's a big jump from last year's overlapping state appropriation of just $5.4 million over a 3-year period. Quote, "The beautiful thing about the last 2 years' worth of budgets is that the state has acknowledged that not only are children's mental health challenges profound in the state and in the country, but that the legislature has to be part of the solution," said State Superintendent Michael Rice. The additional funding comes as schools struggle to find enough resources to help students recover from grief, loss, social isolation, trauma, and other mental health effects of the pandemic. School leaders across the country are reporting more classroom disruptions, student fights, and physical attacks that they attribute to lingering effects of the pandemic. Misbehavior was a defining characteristic that complicated efforts to get children back on track academically after 2 years of disjointed learning across the board. The boost for Trails is just one way that the state legislature is trying to address the problem in the state of Michigan. The 2022-23 budget also creates a new $150 million program for mental health grants and provides $25 million for school-based health centers, up from $11 million a year ago. Many school districts are tapping federal COVID relief funding to bring mental health programs to their students. Elizabeth Kochman, Trails founder and executive director, said the new funding will make a big difference in the number of students that the program reaches over the next 4 years. She couldn't provide a total operating budget because Trails is funded on a project-by-project basis from numerous sources, including federal grants, private donations, and Medicare reimbursements for its work in high-poverty areas. Trails provides resources, training, and consulting to school staff members at all levels, from support staff through administrators. And in some schools, only 1 or 2 teachers have gone through the training, but the program works best when everybody participates. Quote, "What's important is that we not delegate mental health to a single individual or couple individuals in a school," said Rice. Other tiers of the Trails program offer training in suicide risk management and facilitating small group sessions for students who need some extra support. Nationally, spending on such social and emotional learning programs grew almost by 50% between 2019 and 2021, according to a report. While teachers, are on board, some parents are skeptical of Trail's focus on social and emotional learning, said Koshman. Some conservatives say that they believe SEL programs indoctrinate children with liberal ideas about gender identity and the lingering effects of slavery on modern institutions, neither of which is part of Trails or other programs. Others say schools should focus on academics, not social and emotional learning, which they believe to be the parents' job. That's the problem, though. So often what happens is as kids leave the school, and then they're not taught anymore. They go home. This is a complaint of many teachers. This is not me riffing. This is complaints I hear from teachers all the time. I have teachers in my family. I have friends that are teachers. I graduated high school and college with people who are teachers. Almost all of them have the exact same complaint. They teach these kids in school, they teach them in the classroom, then they go home, the parents don't continue that learning, and when the kids misbehave, they blame it on the teachers. You got to do some parenting at home also. So sure, there's some truth to that, but if you can aid that learning at home by additional learning in school for social and emotional learning, I don't see how that's not a benefit to your students. Continuing on in a quote from this article, quote, they don't want a classroom teacher teaching values to a student because that's a family's personal decision and they want to have control over that, end closed quote, said Koshman of the critics. She continued on by saying, quote, we don't want to be teaching values to your child either. We want to equip your child with the tools that will help them manage really difficult emotions like disappointment, rejection, anxiety, worry, sadness, and fear so that they can engage more fully in their classroom and can become better citizens in terms of how they handle feeling dysregulated, upset, or worried, end close quote. None of this is political, said Koshman. Quote, if a kid is showing a behavioral difficulty in a classroom but really wants to be behaving in a compliant way, our curriculum equips them with the tools to help them manage their behavior more effectively, end close quote. That's what Hansen saw happen in the Bark River Harris cafeteria when the student realized he could have used a breathing technique to calm himself rather than pick a fight. Quote, you could almost see the light bulb go off, end closed quote, Hansen remembers. Another student had a different kind of breakthrough that Hansen also attributes to the Trails learning. A withdrawn high school student who wasn't participating in class or socializing with friends suddenly became more engaged 3/4 of the way through the school year. He told her that listening to classmates talk during Trails lessons made him realize that he wasn't the only one struggling with anxiety. Quote, he was a kid floating along under the radar, and just by having it be a more acceptable practice to talk about feelings and struggles, end closed quote, he was able to feel a greater sense of belonging that allowed him to participate more, said Hansen. Hansen said a common lexicon is essential to the program's success at Bark River Harris. Everyone in the district speaks the same language and knows the same behavioral strategies. When a child closes their eyes for a few moments in class, other students understand that they're trying to calm their anxiety using a visualization tool, deep breathing, or other Trails strategies. If a food service worker asks a distressed student to name and rate the intensity of the emotion that they're feeling, that's because they know how to do it because they've practiced using a feelings thermometer. And close to quote, she said. Koshman wants every student to be like that and says the additional state funding will help a lot. Her team is still discussing the best ways to use it. Quote, we're going to have to be really smart to make sure we can adequately staff our team to provide services at a high level, but don't set ourselves up for a fiscal cliff at the end of the funding period, end close quote, she said. Continuing on, Koshman said, quote, we can't just hire, and have a long-term plan. There's a lot more detail in this article that you can see on Bridge Michigan's website by clicking through the article on our website at civiccentertv.com on our local news page, where you'll also find those helpful links to accurate and up-to-date information on COVID-19 from the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division. We have a great program ahead on this Wednesday edition of the Oakland County Megacast. Coming up next, I'll be joined by the director of Oakland University's Center for Civic Engagement, Dave Dulio, followed by attorney Susan Strunk at the bottom of the hour. That's up next on the Oakland County Megacast.
Connect with local leaders, philanthropists, and more. The Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce presents the 2022 Leadership Breakfast. Join the Chamber for a morning of insight with guest speaker Laura Graneman, with the whole event emceed by Fox 2 News anchor Roop Raj. Join your local businesses at the Wabeat Country Club September 13th at 8:30 a.m. Order your tickets by September 6th at westbloomfieldchamber.com/breakfast. We'll see you there.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast, our live daily 1-hour program about all things Oakland County. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program on civiccentertv.com/megacast. We'll find more information on our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV. Joining us now on the Oakland County Megacast is Dave Dulio. He's a political science professor at Oakland University and the director of its Center for Civic Engagement. Dave, thanks for being with us again.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tyler.
Appreciate having you on. We're just several days past the primary elections in Michigan, and already they're having some pretty significant effects on the political realm here in the state of Michigan. Let's begin in the gubernatorial race, particularly so far. What's really been hitting the Republican nominee for Governor Tudor Dixon is her stance on abortion. Already some pretty direct attack ads already making the television and the radio airwaves every single day about her stance on abortion. So far, what sort of impact is that really having on her polling numbers, on her chances of defeating Governor Gretchen Whitmer, knowing that that is a tentpole issue in this election in the state of Michigan and nationwide?
Sure, I think we need to wait a little bit to see what effect it's having. You know, we've got some pretty good poll numbers from pre-primary day. I'd like to see some polling that has just Dixon versus Whitmer in the poll, so that since we know now for sure that it's that matchup. I think the effect can be predicted, though, right? That and Democrats in the Whitmer campaign were quick to jump on this issue because they see it as a winner for them, right? They see it as something where they have an advantage over Dixon, and I think you'll see Tudor Dixon probably try to walk that back and maybe soften that stance a little bit.
Is voter turnout one of the motivations? Do you think a motivation for Tudor Dixon to really lean into her stance on abortion and not maybe come back a little more center to try to grab those non-Trump Republicans or those on the Democratic side or independents that are maybe a little bit unsure about reelecting Governor Whitmer? Because on the one hand, you saw in the primaries that the Democratic voters came out in droves and the Republican voters didn't have bad turnout, but it wasn't necessarily as significant as it was on the Democratic side. Is voter turnout the motivation here, do you believe?
No, I think Whitmer, I think Dixon and her campaign are going to just try to focus on different issues and to try to grab the persuadable voters, to grab the independent voters. And I say that because both parties are going to have their base. And it's about, in a state like Michigan, right, which is arguably a pretty close to 50-50 state, you know, we've got a relatively large middle of the pack segment of the electorate. And both the Whitmer campaign and the Dixon campaign are going to try to fight for those voters.
We're joined by Dave Dulio, director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University, where he also serves as a professor of political science. Joining us on the Oakland County Megacast, you can keep up to date during election season and beyond on political issues in Michigan that are up for debate and discussion at the Center for Civic Engagement by visiting oakland.edu/CCE. That's oakland.edu/CCE. To go back to the attack ads on Tudor Dixon that really started pretty much the day after she won the nomination in the primaries. On the other side, we're not quite seeing that just yet from the Republicans toward Governor Whitmer. Certainly, you can take into account that the Whitmer campaign has a significantly larger bankroll at this moment in time than Tudor Dixon's. But that being said, she's got Donald Trump behind her. She's got the Republican Party behind her. They definitely have some talking points that they have been going off of for years to attack Governor Whitmer. Why haven't we seen a counter campaign just yet from the Republicans?
Yeah, I think money is a part of it. I think, we talked earlier in the cycle about how Tudor Dixon's going to have to uh, make up some ground in that regard. She's going to have to figure out a way to get in some donor money or attract some third party money. It takes time to do that, and I think another factor is they were running that primary campaign right up until the last day, and I think it's a matter of them sort of regrounding themselves and saying, okay, we've dispatched of the primary. Now we can focus on the general with all our effort, and they might have to have moved some things around organizationally or with some priorities, and then just some planning for what the next couple of months is going to look like, right? I mean, you've the next 3 months or so, right? So you've got decisions to be made about how they're going to deploy the resources that they have. Hopefully for them to have more money coming in to be able to do that, and planning maybe for the anticipation of that third party money coming in.
We're joined by Dave Dulio from Oakland University Center for Civic Engagement. More information can be found on oakland.edu/CCE. Stay tuned on that website for information on upcoming events as we continue through this election cycle in the gubernatorial election, the midterm elections in the state of Michigan and nationwide. Dave, moving just ever so slightly, inching down the ballot to the Attorney General's race, where also we had some big news this week between the opponents. Attorney General Dana Nessel has requested a special prosecutor to investigate someone, her presumptive opponent, Matthew DePerno, who is a Republican, into potential tampering with voting machines following the 2020 election. From the Attorney General's standpoint, making that move, especially at this point in time, how does that affect her campaign? Because it's always shaky ground when you are making a legal move against a political opponent. We saw that have an impact, of course, in the 2020 election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, when Trump was inferring that if elected, he would prosecute Hillary Clinton over the email scandal. And we also saw an impact from the legal side of things with Ryan Kelly on the Republican gubernatorial primary coming under fire and having an impact on his polling for criminal involvement in January 6th.
Yeah, I think it's always dicey, and it's these folks are in a tough position as sitting elected officials, right? They have to worry, and when they're running for reelection, right, they have to worry about not only their elected duties, but they have to worry about their political duties, right? I mean, they can say that they've separated them, but I think let's be honest about it, right? It's always mixing. And I think it's also interesting and I'm sure we'll get into this in a bit, but the FBI seizure of materials from Mar-a-Lago and President Trump's residence is another example, right, of that law enforcement, that legal aspect being injected into an election cycle. I think it's certainly much more pointed with the Nessel Attorney General's office and the DePerno question, if you will. And I think that the Attorney General's office is doing what they can to distance themselves from the actual investigation, right? They've asked for this special prosecutor. I imagine that it happens, that they get it. I wonder about the timing, though. From what I know about this, and I'm certainly not an attorney, but I think that you could see this drag out for weeks, if not months, right? So you could have this sort of hanging over as a cloud over the Attorney General race, and for the foreseeable future.
We're joined by Dave Dulio from Oakland University Center for Civic Engagement, and also is a political science professor at Oakland University, joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. Again, keep up to date on everything happening at Oakland University at oakland.edu. That's oakland.edu/CCE for information on upcoming events, as well as past events with the Center for Civic Engagement, especially as we're heading toward a very contentious November election for the governor, for the attorney general, for secretary of state, as well as many, many down ballot races as well. Dave, as we continue talking about the special prosecutor issue, the voting machine issue with Matthew DePerno, Cycling back a little bit to what I said earlier about Ryan Kelly and the impact of his indictment for his involvement in January 6th and the impact that had on his gubernatorial primary. What sort of impact do you think that this situation will have on Matthew DePerno's race for Attorney General? Because on the one hand, it does kind of feed into the questioning of whether or not the 2020 election was legitimate, which fires up the base of the Trump Republicans. But on the other hand, I would presume that made many people apprehensive to vote for Ryan Kelly in the primary when you had other candidates down on the ballot as well that were also very much in the Trump Republican category, such as Tudor Dixon.
I think the difference between the Ryan Kelly situation and the Matt DePerno situation is one was a primary and one's a general election, right? And I think in the primary, you can argue that helped Ryan Kelly. He used it to increase his name recognition. He certainly used it to increase his campaign coffers, right? He raised more money off of that, or raised more money in the wake of that than he had previously. And I think, it probably helped him if we think about it as a net, right? I mean, there was maybe a drag in some ways, but I think it was a net positive for Ryan Kelly. In the general with DePerno versus Nessel, I think it's much more of a question. I think he can see some benefit, and I imagine, and heck, we've seen in the last couple days that they're trying to raise money based on this, and I think that it will probably pay off. But I think the apprehension you mentioned, I think that's a good way to put it. I think it will make some folks who may have been willing to vote for him, maybe make them a little bit more leery and want to see how this plays out, right? I think, and given the increase in and popularity of absentee ballots now, right? Those are going to go out and could be sent in much earlier than obviously November 8th. So, there could be a number of twists and turns in this election cycle, even more than in a normal cycle, when you can see things shift fairly dramatically when folks have absentee ballots in their hands, right? So, that's something to think about as this plays out too.
Yeah, another big difference in the situation with Ryan Kelly in the primary and Matthew DePerno now as we head toward the general is Ryan Kelly had been indicted for that. They had already gone before the courts on that issue. Here in this case, the investigation is just beginning. More information certainly will come out in the coming weeks and the coming months as we head toward November. And whatever comes of that is certainly going to have an impact on Matthew DePerno as well as on Attorney General Dana Nessel. Continuing on with the impact of the primaries, Representative Pete Meyer was talking about the Democratic strategy in the primary elections to kind of lean into going up against Trump Republican candidates, those that are a little bit further on the right on the political spectrum, believing that if you put candidates that are a little bit more, for lack of better terminology off the top of my tongue, radical up against their candidates who maybe are a little bit more moderate or will inspire the progressive base of the Democratic Party, that they're more likely to win. Representative Pete Meyer urged some caution in that, or at least after the fact said that the Democrats probably should have practiced some more caution. Can you speak, about the strategy that they brought in putting some support financially behind advertising campaigns for the Trump Republican candidates, and why Pete Meyer, especially now that he's out of the race, is urging such caution with this kind of a strategy?
Well, let's start with the second part of that, and I think he's urging caution because it could backfire, right? And you've even seen some Democrats make that same point. I'm not so sure that while I think that it's fair to make that warning, I don't think that you'll see that play out in this particular district. It is, I think, too much of a Democratic leaning district for Mr. Gibbs to win there. I think the Democratic candidate there, Hillary Scholten, has got a much better chance, which is exactly the strategy, right? I mean, it's not terribly complicated. I tell my students often that political science is not rocket science. You know, we're a lot of things can be boiled down to pretty simple terms. And this is one of those, right? The Democrats looked at that 3rd congressional district and Peter Meyer's candidacy as a threat, right? They saw him as a much tougher general election candidate than Mr. Gibbs. So they come in and they spend almost $500,000 sort of raising Mr. Gibbs up with spending that his campaign hadn't seen in the entirety of that campaign, right? And they did it to try and get more Republicans to vote for Gibbs than would vote for Meyer. And that worked, right? So now, as we said, right, they see a much easier path now for a Scholten victory than if it was with Peter Meyer.
Dave Dulio joins us on the Oakland County Megacasts, the director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University, where he also is a professor of political science. More information on the Center for Civic Engagement can be found at oakland.edu/CCE. That's oakland.edu/CCE for updated information on upcoming events throughout the general election cycle here leading up to November 8th. Dave, you mentioned it earlier on the national level. The FBI went into Mar-a-Lago earlier on this week to find records that were improperly taken and in some cases attempted to be disposed of by former U.S. President Donald Trump. What sort of impact do you believe that will have on the Republican Party in the races in November here in Michigan and across the country? Because attacks on Donald Trump in the past have really sort of ignited the fanfare behind those that support him, believing that it's another in a long strain of witch hunts and gotcha attempts from the Democratic Party. Do you believe that that's going to inspire more in the Republican Party, especially those Trump supporters, to get out to the polls and support their candidates?
We'll see about that piece. You know, I think it's important to note that we don't really know a whole lot about what the search by the FBI was about. You know, we have a bunch of speculation, but we don't have any details from either side, right? From the Justice Department. And I think that, you know, there have been some calls for them to come out and make a statement about this to sort of give the public some information. We haven't heard anything specific about what was taken from the Trump side, which I imagine they could speak to. So we're really working with a lot of uncertainty here. And I think that the true impact won't be felt until we know what the details are, right? But in the short term, I think it's been really interesting to me to see the unity from Republicans, right? Even from some potential 2024 rivals like Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, right? All coming out to the former president's defense. Although, you know, you sort of sit and say, well, what else would they do, right? They're not gonna come and say good job FBI, right? But they, you know, I think the force with which they were taking on that action and seemingly defending the former president is notable. I also think it's important to say that Democrats have also started to wonder about this, right? Even somebody like Andrew Cuomo came out and said that the Justice Department needs to say something and tell us what they're doing. So, I mean, when would we think that would be the case? Now, he's maybe trying to get back into politics right after his resignation, but it's, I think, it's interesting to watch the swirl, if you will. I think that there is some potential to unify the party and or at least give the Republicans a rallying cry, right? But in terms of impact at the polls, right? I mean, November's a long way away. Yeah. Except we do have a few more primaries where this could play out, specifically Wyoming, where Liz Cheney, right, maybe the #1 Trump detractor in the U.S. House of Representatives, is in a political battle to retain her seat. You might see impact there. But I think November's a long way away, where there's so much to play out that we don't really know I think suffice it to say, we need some more details.
Yeah, the strategy in this upcoming election for the Trump Republicans has really been twofold. It's been pretty simple, as you said. In the primaries, the Republican goal is to defeat the rhinos, Republicans in name only, as they refer to them in their party, and then, of course, move on to defeat the Democrats. Dave, anything else for us today that we haven't discussed, or anything upcoming at the Center for Civic Engagement that you'd like to discuss today?
Yeah, I think the first part of that question, Tyler, I think notable that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar barely escaped a primary challenge from a pro-police, very vocal pro-police Democrat. She squeaked by, and I think that's notable, just sort of given how successful she had been before. I think that's something to keep an eye on. She's not going to lose that seat in the general, but the larger dynamic of maybe some Democrats are finding the progressive wing a little too radical for their taste. That's something to watch out for. And in the fall, we'll have a number of programs and activities that your viewers and listeners can access at Oakland University. We're going to continue our office hours series where we talk about timely topics with faculty experts. We'll do a couple election related sessions, one on the economy and one on sustainability. We'll have information on the website pretty soon on how folks can register. And I'll also tease a little bit. We're looking at two pretty high profile things that we hope to be able to talk to you about in the near future.
Well, Dave, we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
More information, again, to keep up to date on the Center for Civic Engagement at oakland.edu/CCE, where you'll see their upcoming events listed there, and you can go back and watch their previous events and learn more information about other discussions they've had in the past, some of which are still very relevant in our political world here in Michigan and in Oakland County today. Oakland.edu/CCE, or search Oakland University Center for Civic Engagement on YouTube. We'll take a break on the Oakland County Megacast on the other side, and recent discussions on financial issues in Oakland County and across the state of Michigan. We mentioned the importance of estate planning. Up next, we'll talk to an expert on that topic. Susan Strunk joins us after the break from Monaghan, PC. We'll be back in just a moment on the Oakland County Megacast.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast, our live daily 1-hour show about all things Oakland County. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program on civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV. Joining us now on the Oakland County Megacast is Susan Strunk. She is an attorney and a counselor at Monaghan, PC. Susan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tyler.
Appreciate having you on. So we've had some recent discussions with financial advisors and other financial experts about a number of topics, especially in today's economy, and then also just seeing in recent weeks, especially here in Oakland County, the impact of some tragic deaths of people that were in the community. And that brings up the topic of estate planning, which for so many is something that they focus on maybe later on in life or after they have kids. But in a general sense, Susan, who should be focusing on estate planning and when should that focus begin?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Tyler. I would say as early as the age of 18, you could start to set up some documents for yourself. Something that maybe I would recommend for an 18-year-old would be to get some powers of attorney in place. Those would be financial powers of attorney, healthcare powers of attorney. These are documents that if something were to happen to you during your lifetime and you were seen unable to make medical or financial decisions for yourself, you would assign a patient advocate or an attorney in fact to make those decisions for you, and they would follow the instructions that you set forth in your document. I think a common misconception with powers of attorney are that there's any sort of effect after you pass. That's not the case. They're only effective while you're living. So these kind of things come into play when we least expect them, when you're in a car crash and you become into a coma or something of that matter. So it sort of helps your family out in a very difficult time of their life and your life, and it doesn't leave people scattering to try to figure out what you might have wanted. A lot of clients say, pull the plug, not pull the plug. We put it in much more precise terms, but those are sort of the types of decisions that you make long before that moment of need happens. And that's sort of something that I would recommend to maybe a young person that's thinking, I don't really have much, and that's another thing. I think there's a myth that you have to have a lot of money to go to see someone or get some estate planning documents set in place. It's not the case. When you pass, you can't take it with you when you go. So one of two things will happen. You will have either set up during your lifetime either a will or a trust, which when you pass away, the terms of those documents go into place and you either have someone, a personal representative or a trustee, carry out your wishes. If you haven't prepared those documents, your things are subject to the law of intestate succession. And for some people, that actually might be all right because the legislator has come up with a set of statutes that says if you die, your property goes to this person. And it sort of goes down. It's something called the table of consanguinity. But in today's modern world, where we are maybe getting further and further away from it making sense for your house and your money and your stocks to go to a next of kin, that's also another reason why it makes sense to get a plan. Are you not married? Maybe it makes sense to be in a domestic relationship, or maybe it's a blended family. We're seeing that a lot with older individuals as they near end of life. And I would just really recommend people of blended families to have their documents set forth. Come meet with me or anyone and have those documents written, have them signed, have it very clear what happened at the end, because we're seeing a lot now. We have adult children from, marriages sort of coming forth, and it's sort of the oldest flaw in the book as far as greed, and it also stems from very, complicated familial issues that sometimes come out decades and decades later. Mom left me out, or something, and sort of, you see this rogue child maybe wreak havoc on the estate or really cause people a lot of despair. And also sort of speaking in another way of who should have the estate plan, people with young children. If you pass, who determines who your legal guardian is? A judge. A judge will decide that, unless you have set forth in a will who you want to be the legal guardian of your children. That's also another reason people with minor children sometimes are interested in a revocable living trust. And perhaps we could talk about trusts on another time, that we could maybe talk about the ins and outs of trusts. But one of the really good things about trusts are, say you have a 5-year-old. Well, if something were to happen to you, the money set aside for that 5-year-old would be under the custodian of whoever you set forth in a will or something in that matter. But when they turn 18, if you only had a will, that money hits their hand. I would say 99.9% of my clients are not comfortable with that. And especially considering the fact that if that's happening, the reality may be that 18-year-old has lost both parents. So we're not sure what sort of path the child might go down out of despair, or they might, all sorts of things can happen. And we sort of, when we're doing estate planning, we're planning for those unknowns. So we're planning for the worst case scenario. But with a trust, you can dictate what age the child would receive money. For example, when they're 18, maybe they get 20% of the money that you have set aside. When they're 25, they get half. And when they're 30, they would get 100%. Those are some common distribution ages. So that's really a great benefit of having a trust. And then, a problem with a trust, a lot of times people don't fund it. It is a little more legwork. Properly retitling certain assets into the trust. The trust is a big, maybe, a pot or a pitcher of water. And if you just leave it empty, you just have this great vessel with none of your assets in it. It's useless. So my clients, we don't have that issue, because I really do help and make sure that all of their assets are properly funded into that trust. But I can't know if they will die with the $1 million lottery ticket in their hands. That's always the joke that we use is, sometimes things get left out. And in that case, if there was something left out of a trust, you're going to be, your estate will be subject to probate. And I'm approaching again another topic that could be easily another 15-minute session, but and going into probate is not the worst thing. Basically, it's a judge overseeing the distribution of your estate, and it can be as formal or informal as the beneficiaries and the personal representatives see fit. You could have celebrities you hear that go through probate court, but you can also have a single widow that just had a home that she had not put into a trust, or she didn't transfer via a deed or something of that matter. So we're seeing all sorts of estates that can be in probate. And, there are a couple benefits of probate. Some of them are, there's sort of a finite start and end date. So if there are some creditors, there's a bunch of procedures that occur, and once those procedures and once certain deadlines are met, creditors are barred from making further claims of the estate. So it does give people peace of mind. So maybe for larger estates, and if there's a lot of unknown creditors or known creditors, it sort of does give beneficiaries and personal representatives that peace of mind. But some of the negatives are it takes many months. There's statutory requirement of how long the probate has to be open. There are many documents that need to be filled out. There's just a lot of more paperwork involved, where I would say 9 times out of 10, the costs incurred and the extra year of having to work with an attorney or try to do it yourself is not worth the cost that you, as as you're sort of looking at your estate, if you just make those decisions now, do that planning now, and have a system set in place, it's a lot more effective.
So, Susan, where should somebody start as they're preparing to go through the process of writing a will or of crafting a will with an attorney or a counselor? What should they have prepared? What are some key points that they should be preparing before they start that conversation or as they are preparing and writing their will, even if it's something like Michigan's statutory will?
Right. Michigan statutory will. I'm really glad you brought that up. That is a free option for someone if the cost is prohibitive, where you can accomplish those goals of deciding who you want for your guardian. Some of the choices that you need to be thinking about is who are you going to task with administering your estate when you pass. Traditionally, if you have a spouse, they're usually the first choice. Oftentimes we see siblings or children that are adults would be choices, cousins, stuff like that. And I think that that discussion needs to happen before you draft your will. I think you need to check in with that person and ask them if they think at this time that they would be up to that task when and if it occurs. And you have to have a few backups in mind if someone's unwilling or unable to act. And usually I suggest clients have at least about 3 people in mind for that role. And then, of course, the obvious, I suppose, of who's going to get the money, who's going to get the engagement ring, who's going to get the car, who's going to get the home, all of those sorts of things. And typically when you meet with an attorney, they will probably have some sort of questionnaire that they have drafted. And I find it effective to have clients fill out the questionnaire, and then we come and we have the discussion and we go over the answers. And then at that point is when I can really tailor my advice and say, I'm not sure about this person's age or, this person's financial acumen. And maybe I would select different individuals, or maybe I would select different distribution tables. That's sort of where we have that discussion of what you want versus what I would recommend, and we can come out with an excellent plan that is ironclad.
A little bit of work now, a little bit of stress maybe now can do a lot of wonders for those that may be dealing with your finances, your assets, and what happens with your life after your life later on. So, Susan, we appreciate your time. Anything else that would be important for our audience to consider in regards to estate planning today before we let you go?
I would just mention really quick that I have been using ladybird deeds a lot for individuals where maybe their home is their largest asset. And some of the benefits of that are if, for example, you would like to leave your home to a child, an adult child, you can draft something. It's called an enhanced life estate deed. And Michigan and Florida are the only states that allow for these types of deeds. You can draft a deed that says, it gives you so much control over your property, unlike a typical quitclaim deed or a warranty deed, where if I draft that deed and I put my child on it, they become the part owner of my property as soon as I go and record it. So that is a problem as far as you don't know if your children will have a creditor in the future. And then when you want to go sell that property, let's say you and your child have a disagreement at some point, they have to sign the deed to allow you to sell your property. And most people are not comfortable with that. So the ladybird deed is something that says you have all of this control while you're living. And if you don't sell or mortgage or reconvey the property before you pass, on the moment of your death, they would receive it. So there's a whole host of benefits to that. There's also some other step up in tax basis benefits. And I guess I would just advise people, if your home is one of your largest assets and you haven't given consideration of what's going to happen to it when you pass, I would recommend that you contact an attorney and ask them whether they think a ladybird deed is right for you.
Susan, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tyler.
You can get in contact with Susan and other attorneys and counselors at the Monaghan law firm, Monaghan PC, by visiting MonaghanPC.com, MonaghanPC.com, or calling 248-642-5770. Again, that's 248-642-5770. We'll take a break now on your radio homes for the Megacast 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills, as well as the remainder of our network. On the other side, we'll kick off the Michigan Megacast in Detroit with one individual who's created a nonprofit organization that has inspired leadership and community involvement in one of the neighborhoods in Detroit to restore it into a vibrant and loving and close-knit community today. Larry Johnson from Life Builders Detroit joins us next on the Michigan Megacast.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Connect with local leaders, philanthropists, and more. The Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce presents the 2022 Leadership Breakfast. Join the Chamber for a morning of insight with guest speaker Laura Graneman, with the whole event emceed by Fox 2 News anchor Roop Raj. Join your local businesses at the Wabeat Country Club September 13th at 8:30 a.m. Order your tickets by September 6th at westbloomfieldchamber.com/breakfast. We'll see you there.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head on, visit michigan.gov/flu.
Welcome to the Michigan Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft, welcoming you to our live 5 days a week look into all things Michigan on TV, radio, and live streaming. Today, we'll be talking to volunteers making a difference in their community, mental health advocates, and more about topics of interest and importance to Michiganders like you. Learn more about the program by visiting civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV, our co-flagship. Joining us now on the Michigan Megacast is Larry Johnson, the director of Life Builders Detroit, with us on the program. Larry, appreciate having you on. And first off, just tell us a little bit about Life Builders Detroit and some of the background of your organization and how you guys started on this sort of effort.
Hey, it's a delight to be here, Tyler. It's Larry Johnson, by the way.
Larry Johnson.
Typo there. And listen, I have to tell you, I was watching your commercials leading up to us coming live here, and I'm hungry. And that commercial that you had with all that food on there, all it did is like, man, I can't wait to have lunch today. But anyway, thanks for inviting us. We're delighted to be here.
Appreciate having you on, Larry. So first off, tell us a little bit about Life Builders, the history of the organization, and its mission in Detroit.
Thanks, Tyler. Well, you know what? Maybe some people don't like to do interviews because they're a little nervous and they wonder what to say. But I got to tell you, I'm so geeked about what we're doing, what the Lord called us to 17 years ago, that I love to share, what's happened and how we got here. Well, short story is because, we have a lot of ground to cover in a short period of time. My wife and I felt called to do something significant with our lives about 20 years ago. And we said, you know what, maybe we should just do something here in Detroit. There's a lot of despair and hopelessness. Maybe if we gave our life to this and accept a calling on our life by the Lord Jesus, maybe we can make an impact. Well, here we are today with a community that's been revitalized and transformed in many ways. We have a vibrant affordable housing program. where we have purchased residential and commercial properties in excess of 80. We've developed an early childhood education center in the community, state of the art. We have programs from infants all the way through seniors in our community. We do MISHDA housing programs to provide people with an opportunity to get minor home repairs done that they wouldn't normally be able to get done. We run a summer camp, which we're in the middle of right now. We have 80 kids that went to our summer day camp. They are currently now away in an overnight camp, which is really exciting for many of them. We also have a teen workforce program where we have 25 teens that we're mentoring in a work environment throughout the summer. And you know, one of the exciting things as a result of the work that we've done, Tyler, is this. Because of the work we started to do so many years ago, it got the attention of the city of Detroit. And we then became one of the target neighborhoods where investment is coming into our community. So that has just allowed us to exponentially advance our work in the community. So we couldn't be more excited than we are right now.
None of these efforts are done alone, and especially when you're providing so many different resources and so many different services to this particular area of Detroit. How important has partnership been in the community to really take this from a grassroots effort to a community-wide effort in Detroit?
Wow, that's a great question. A lot of people miss the importance of collaboration and partnership, particularly when you look at a huge effort that if you looked at it by just coming into our office, you'd say, how'd you do all this? I only see like 8 or 10 people. Well, it's been through those collaborative efforts, you know, with key partners who align with our mission and goals, bringing excellent services into our community that allows us to do them now rather than have to train people and do them later. So they have been vital in so many areas. Tutoring, teen mentoring, construction work that we've done in the community. I mean, we couldn't do it without them. And I will say this, we've also had some great partners, you know, from out in the suburbs who have come in. They've helped us with some of the rehab work we've done on homes in the early years. As a matter of fact, just recently, we had a large group come from Bloomfield Hills that were here for a week. We had another group that just finished yesterday from out in Romeo. And all of this just helps us to do more work less expensively so that we can leverage the donor dollars we get to really advance the critical mission issues. And by the way, you might be interested in this. It's important to have goals, you know, and to have targets issued. Our goals in our strategic plan, if you read it, are this: 300 houses, $30 million in investment, and 300 youth significantly impacted by our work. Those are our goals for 2025. Now, if you'd have asked me, was that feasible? We think of that 10 years ago? No. But as a result of all the attention that's been given to work we're doing in the community, all this now is really feasible. We have seen the blessings of the Lord Jesus fall on us in ways we never imagined.
We're joined by Larry Johnson, the Executive Director of Life Builders Detroit, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. You can find more information and get involved with their efforts to reclaim, rebuild, and empower this area of Detroit by visiting lifebuildersdetroit.com, lifebuildersdetroit.com for more information. And Larry, just seeing the identity of the community change and the pride in the community change through these efforts, from going from an area, a time when these areas of Detroit were being disinvested in, or being neglected in many cases, to putting these small efforts in here and there, and then as they grow, they become bigger and bigger efforts to what you're seeing now. Take us along the journey of how each of those different moves and each of those different eras of the work of Life Builders has brought something new to the community while restoring that pride that was there in the past.
Wow, I can tell you spent some time researching us, and I appreciate that. Our mission is to restore dignity and bring hope, you know, to all of Regent Park. Now that's 10,000 residents, 3,000 homes, and we know that there are slightly less than 2,000 youth that are 18 years of age and younger. Tyler, when we first came there, and we didn't know this when we first started, but our zip code, the area that we were in, was designated as Detroit's most dangerous zip code. Well, when our work got started, there was blight and abandonment everywhere. Our kids, to come to our programs, had to walk through this drug-infested, blighted area, and it was in the middle of our bankruptcy, the political corruption, the real estate crisis, of the mid to 2007, 2008 real estate crisis. It was, I would say, it was a mess. I can remember this one particular area, which is in the center of our community. It's a Boulder Bringard Park. It's a public park. Grass is 2 feet high. I used to pick the kids up there in an old bus that was donated to us for our youth programming. The only thing that was done there at the park on the corners were drugs were being sold. There was an abandoned elementary school that had been abandoned for 7 years, and it just sat there. It was drug infested, used for no good. Wow, today, it's become the epicenter of the community. The park has been revamped. Thank you to grantors that have provided us funding, to revamp the park. And now we have the city coming behind us later on this year to add some additional improvements. We tore down all but a small portion of the school and turned it into a state-of-the-art early childhood education center. So what was once looked at with despair and hopelessness and a sign of what the community had gone to is now a sign of life. And so what that has done in so many cases, our neighborhood's now stable, where people were moving out. People are saying, I'm not going anywhere. I'm inviting my friends to come in. So we have in our housing pillar of our work, never any vacancies. People are lined up to get into our houses because we have a standard of housing that is unmatched anywhere. And people want to be here in our community. So we have just a lot to be thankful for. And we will hear, and this is what I love, I know you get this, we hear indirectly sometimes and directly from homeowners how grateful they are for the work that we've done starting 17 years ago, because it was hopeless at the time.
We're joined by Larry Johnson, Executive Director of Life Builders Detroit, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. And what's great about these efforts is that it's been an effort to restore the community as the community was meant to be and as the community was before those times of hopelessness. You're not necessarily doing what so often happens when cities are quote unquote rebuilt or brought back and so to speak, of we're remaking this, we're going to redesign everything in this neighborhood. We're going to take it over. We're going to, frankly, gentrify the neighborhood. And the people that were there that did call this home, they're not going to call it home anymore. Your efforts have clearly been tracked on maintaining this neighborhood's identity and giving the people that live in this area of Detroit the hope that they deserve and the resources that they've had neglected upon them for so long. And that's what's great about this, is it's really been, and correct me if I'm wrong, centered on directing this community back to a point where it can rebuild itself, not be rebuilt by somebody else.
Boy, Tyler, that's a keen observation. That's exactly what's happening. After about 5 or 6 years, we really saw the community start to take ownership again of the transformation. You'd see people working in their yards, making improvements themselves on their homes. It was all became an effort of all of us working on the transformation, working with the city to get houses torn down, putting speed bumps in to avoid this. Having a neighborhood police officer who was assigned, to our specific community, so we could deal with some matters that needed to be taken care of, that had infiltrated our community. Block clubs, neighborhood associations, community meetings where people have an opportunity to say, gosh, now that everything is turned in the other direction. Could we do this? Is this possible? Maybe we can all come together and do this. So there's hope here today like there never was. When I drive around the community, and I did just again the other day, I'll drive around and see where the houses are that we have rehabbed and sold, where our rental properties are in the community, fields that we've renovated. It's a very emotional time for me because I just see what a lot of hard work, prayers, and commitment, being inconvenienced can lead to over time. The community has, in fact, changed. It is now returning to what it was some 20 years ago. You used the word when we first started, disinvestment. Oh my gosh, we had nothing back then. And when my wife and I moved from Grosse Pointe into the community, we saw what that looked like with lack of city services, including response to EMS calls. I mean, just garbage pickup, that sort of thing. It was absolutely deplorable. Now, you can read about it, you can watch it, you can hear it, you can read a news article, but to actually experience it, that gave us new light, perseverance, and determination that we were going to do what we could to come alongside everybody and encourage them so that that community could once again be what it was. Because you may recall in your research, or found in your research, Tyler, that at one point in time, this was referred to as the Gold Coast. Police officers, teachers, firefighters all lived in this area. Three-bedroom brick bungalows. The neighborhood is absolutely beautiful. And then the perfect storm hit and everything began to happen. But we're on the rebound and we're excited about it.
Well, Larry, we appreciate you joining us and telling us more about this and for coming on. And of course, for all the efforts that you and everyone else involved with Life Builders are doing to restore this community in Detroit.
Thank you, Tyler. I do want to say, to help us with our ministry expense that we do in the community, I'm excited to tell you, and I'm wearing it today, we just launched a few days ago an apparel line. So I invite people, because 100% of the profits from the apparel line go to help our youth ministry in the community. So that can be found on our website, and I invite people to head there and pick up a piece.
Well, Larry, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much for telling us about Detroit, Life Builders Detroit, and all the great work you're doing to restore a lively and vibrant neighborhood in your community in Detroit. That's a great story. Thank you for telling us. We'll take a break on the Michigan Megacast. On the other side, a mental health organization here in the state of Michigan is making it a little bit easier for you to talk about whatever issues you or others may be having. We'll talk to Kevin Fischer from NAMI of Michigan next on the Michigan Megacast.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu. Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. keep my family safe, and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine. I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Connect with local leaders, philanthropists, and more. The Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce presents the 2022 Leadership Breakfast. Join the Chamber for a morning of insight with guest speaker Laura Graneman, with the whole event emceed by Fox 2 News anchor Roop Raj. Join your local businesses at the Wabeat Country Club September 13th at 8:30 a.m. Order your tickets by September 6th at westbloomfieldchamber.com/breakfast. We'll see you there.
Let's whoop it up for these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Michigan Megacast, our live daily 1-hour radio, TV, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV. Joining us now on the Michigan Megacast is the Executive Director of NAMI Michigan, Kevin Fischer, joining us on the program. Kevin, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So first off, for those that are unfamiliar with NAMI of Michigan's work, can you tell us what your organization does to provide mental health support for people across the great state of Michigan?
NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We're the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization that's purely dedicated to building better lives for anybody that's affected by mental illness, not just people with a mental health diagnosis, but for family members, caregivers, and literally the community at large. We are not a direct care provider, so we don't provide direct counseling, social work, psychiatrists, psychologists, but we do provide education and support groups at no cost to participants. And we're also a great resource to connect people in need of behavioral health services to those services in their community. So for example, we work very closely with the Department of Community Mental Health and a lot of provider agencies directly in your communities.
As we've seen over the past several years, there's been a greater emphasis put on mental health care in our communities here in Michigan, certainly, and even beyond across the U.S. and around the world as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, where mental health struggles became much more visible than they were before, or at least much more commonly discussed than they had been pre-pandemic. As a result, there's been so many greater efforts on the grassroots level, on the community level, and certainly on the national level as well, to provide outlets for people to talk about their mental health with professionals or with those that can lead them to professional care. We talked about at the national level, the introduction of the 988 hotline, for the 988 number for the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Here in Michigan, NAMI's put forth a new effort that was just launched very recently. Their helpline, which is, you text helpline in all caps to 62640, and you're able to nationwide receive text message support for mental health issues through NAMI. Can you tell us about this, how long this has been in development, and why this was a focus for NAMI at the state level, certainly, and even at the national level to roll out to people here in Michigan?
So this was beta tested in Texas and New York for the last couple of years, because what we recognize specifically amongst young people is texting is the preferred method of communication, staying in touch with family and friends, resources. So this is just a part of NAMI's national continuing effort to meet people where they are. If you want to talk to us on the phone, great. We've seen, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, telemedicine really explode and really be successful. And so this is just a part of that continuing effort to make sure we can meet people where they are and in its most comfortable place possible to provide them with resources, ultimately to improve the quality of and save lives.
So who is staffing this? Because who is on the other side of the texting thread in this case? If somebody texts the number, they text helpline to 62640. Who is on the other side?
It goes directly to the national NAMI helpline. And so you are communicating with volunteers primarily, but some of those volunteers are professionals, NAMI staff members, trained peer support specialists, all really the same people who, if you called our 800-950-6264 helpline between the hours of 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, those same people would be there to help you if you're texting.
We're joined by Kevin Fischer. He's the Executive Director of NAMI of Michigan, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. You can find more information on the helpline and other resources through Michigan's chapter of NAMI by visiting NAMIMI.org. That's NAMIMI.org or NAMIMI.org for more information. It's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Their Michigan chapter can be found online, NAMIMI.org. So is this something that people can access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or is this something that's a little bit more limited access?
A little bit more limited. Right now, just 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
To your knowledge, on a national level from NAMI, is there plans in the future to expand that out to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Because we know that anybody can go into a crisis at any time. That's not necessarily between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. on Monday through Friday.
Exactly. I would say we're always open to it. You know, during the pandemic, we extended the crisis line hours twice, but as the need arose. And so as the need rises, we'll continue to do that. NAMI, again, not being a direct care provider, we are, I would almost say supplemental to like the new 988. 988 is available 24/7. So NAMI is supplemental to that kind of concept.
We're joined by Kevin Fischer. He's the Executive Director of NAMI of Michigan, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. More information, again, can be found on their website, NAMIMI.org. That's NAMIMI.org for more information beyond the text line, which, again, is accessible Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. By phone at 1-800-950-NAMI, or that is 1-800-950-6264, or you can text helpline to 62640. And we'll be connected via text message to chat with someone at the National NAMI Helpline. Again, 10 a.m. until 10 p.m., Monday through Friday. Text helpline to 62640, or you can also call their helpline at 1-800-950-NAMI, 1-800-950-6264 for more information. Beyond the call line and, of course, to the 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday text line that's now available through NAMI, what other resources are available to Michiganders right here in our state to access mental health care or mental health resources that can point them in the right direction through your organization?
So at the NAMI state office, my office, you can reach us at 517-485-4049. That's 517-485-4049. You can also reach us, as you mentioned, at our website, NAMIMI.org. And then within the state of Michigan, we have 12 local affiliates that also operate what we call helpline or warm lines. And those tend to vary by local affiliate, but typically during normal business hours, because they're typically staffed by volunteers, not a paid staff that's there 24/7.
We're joined by Kevin Fischer. He is the Executive Director of NAMI of Michigan, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. Again, you can find more information on their website at namimi.org. That's NAMI.org, or by calling them directly at 517-485-4049, 517-485-4049. In terms of any events or other ways that people can participate in NAMI programs at the state level, what is coming up for your organization? Are there any ways that people can participate in spreading the good word about your organization right here in the state of Michigan?
We have NAMI Walks events coming up this year, September 24th on the campus at Wayne State University in Detroit. We will be hosting our 20th annual NAMI Walks event. It is a fundraising, but primarily an awareness raising event with lots of resources available. Many behavioral health care providers across Southeast Michigan have information booths there. That information is available at our website, namimi.org, or by calling our office. And there's a second walk in Grand Rapids on October the 8th on the campus of Davenport University. Again, same thing. It is a mental health awareness raising event where we make sure we provide resources to folks in the community. And it's always also a fundraising event because NAMI local affiliates are nonprofits. They don't receive major federal or state grants. And in order for us to be able to provide our education and support programs at no cost to participants, this is an opportunity for us to raise funds to support that.
NAMI.org. That's NAMI.org for more information on NAMI of Michigan and all their events and resources and programs coming up in the near future and available right now and all throughout the year on their website. Again, NAMI of Michigan's website, NAMI.org. We're joined by Executive Director Kevin Fischer of NAMI's Michigan chapter on the Michigan Megacast. Kevin, I want to give you an opportunity too. If people want to get involved and want to help others that are going through a mental health struggle, maybe they have experience going through a situation themselves and they could be useful to others right here in the Great Lakes State. Are there volunteer opportunities or other opportunities for people to join your team and your organization in their efforts to provide for people's mental health for Michiganders?
Absolutely. At the local level in particular, being a grassroots organization, we are 99% a volunteer organization. And so we're always looking for volunteers to support us. If you have website talent or accounting talents, we welcome all types of talents. If you're interested in learning more about our programming, we provide free training so you can become a program facilitator. There's always opportunities at the local NAMI affiliates. You can find your local NAMI affiliate again on our website at namimi.org. Just click on the affiliates tab and you'll be able to find the local affiliate closest to you.
Kevin, we appreciate your time. Before we let you go, anything else that would be important for our audience to keep in consideration at this time in terms of your work at NAMI of Michigan or other information we haven't discussed yet?
I would always love to remind people your mental health is as important as your other physical health. Mental illness is actually a medical diagnosis, not a weakness of character. And so this stigma that we need to overcome that prevents people from taking the first steps to getting help is really our major focus. So do not feel that you're alone. I know it sometimes sounds cliche when you see commercials and things that say you're not alone. When over 80 million Americans are affected by mental health crisis each year, you truly are not alone. So please don't suffer in silence. Please contact your local NAMI affiliate, and we are absolutely there to help and support you.
Kevin, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There are text helplines through NAMI's national organization available here in Michigan as well. Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. Eastern time. A text helpline in all caps, helpline, all one word, HELPLINE to 62640. That's again, text helpline, HELPLINE to 62640 between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. Monday through Friday. If you would like to speak on the phone, you can also call their national helpline at 1-800-950-NAMI. That's 1-800-950-6200. We'll take a break on the Michigan Megacast. When we come back, we love our parks. We love to visit our parks during the warm months of the year and the cold months of the year alike. And there are some major improvements happening thanks to some national funding coming to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. We'll talk with the Parks and Recreation Director, Ron Olson, after the break on the Michigan Megacast.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine. I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Connect with local leaders, philanthropists, and more. The Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce presents the 2022 Leadership Breakfast. Join the Chamber for a morning of insight with guest speaker Laura Graneman, with the whole event emceed by Fox 2 News anchor Roop Raj. Join your local businesses at the Wabeat Country Club September 13th at 8:30 a.m. Order your tickets by September 6th at westbloomfieldchamber.com/breakfast. We'll see you there.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu. Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Welcome back to the Michigan Megacast, our live daily 1-hour TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program by visiting our flagship's website, civiccentertv.com/megacast. You'll find information on our entire network of stations across the great state of Michigan, including our co-flagship on your smart TVs, on your smartphones, and on the web for free. That is My Michigan TV at mymitv.com, mymitv.com, where you can also learn more information about where you can download their free app for your smart TV and your smartphone and take My Michigan TV programming home and on the road across Michigan and around the world with the free My Michigan TV app. Joining us now on the Michigan Megacast is the Director of Parks and Recreation at the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, or as many of us know it, the DNR. Ron Olson joins us now on the Michigan Megacast. Ron, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So a lot's going on in our parks, especially in the last couple of years as we have kind of gone into a different phase or a couple different phases of the COVID-19 pandemic, people getting back out into the community, certainly back out into our parks in heaps and droves over the last couple of years in particular. And the parks are making improvements as well here in the state of Michigan using American Rescue Plan funds or ARPA funds to improve many of these different locations. Can you tell us about some of these improvements that are being made at these parks and how long they've been necessary for?
Well, I started with the DNR in 2005, and we began an assessment of what our infrastructure was, and we did site inspections throughout all the state parks at that particular time, and we came up with a list of needs of nearing $300 million, and that included everything from sewer systems, utilities, water, electric, roads, and buildings, and bathrooms and shower buildings, and in some environmental situations, historic preservation, and improvement of and protection of cultural resources. And over time, our financial circumstance improved, and we were able to start working on those. Plus, we had secured grants and other funding, but we still, over time, and fast forward up to the more recent time, we still had, just below $300 million of things, because as things get older, repairs and upgrades need to take place. So when the recovery funds were made available by the federal government to each state, the governor had proposed, out of the nearly $8 billion of allocated funds to the state, $250 million to rehabilitate the state park system, to do a big catch-up from that list, which has been well known for a long time, but this was an opportunity. So that all transpired. The legislature very overwhelmingly approved of this, and it became a reality earlier this year. And we're now in the process of launching what we call a first phase of shovel-ready projects, that are projects that had already been designed that we could put out to bid. And then another wave was projects that were we had identified and were priorities, but they went out for design and engineering work. So right now we have about $16 million worth of projects out in the marketplace to work on, but eventually we will address everything on the list. But that's our first shot. In the last few weeks, we got those out to bid.
We're joined by Ron Olson, Chief of Parks and Recreation for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, or DNR. More information can be found on their website, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR for more information and updates along the way on some of these many improvements that are being made in park infrastructure projects. So with the initial influx of money that's being allocated to Michigan's parks through the state's ARPA funds, where are those initial funds going? What specific projects is the DNR starting off with?
Well, these happen to be ones that, like I said, were really already designed and ready to go to bid, and some of them didn't have funding, so they were sitting. One of them is at Fayette Historic State Park in the Upper Peninsula, was to work on some of the chronic needs of the historic town up there, because we have some different things, including masonry walls and others that are in chronic need of restoration to keep the town center and historic integrity there. We also have at Straight State Park, we have $2 million worth of projects there. We have 2 toilet shower buildings primarily that will be replaced or renovated in the campground up there. We have Sheboygan State Park. We have campground electrical systems, water distribution, and some sewer upgrades there as well. Bay City Recreation Area. The state park, I should say, has the visitor center, which is one of the most heavily used and visited ones by school groups and otherwise, going through a modernization. That building is very old and needs to be more accessible and be brought up to modern times. And we have some work at Sterling State Park to commence some much needed eroded trails and pathways that go around the ponds there that were really impacted by high water situations. And Porcupine Mountains, we have a number of restoration projects there. And Belle Isles Park in Detroit, we have a huge project there to work on the upper part of the Anna Scripps Whitcomb Conservatory, where that was built in the early 1900s and is in critical need of infrastructure repair to the integrity of the structure, the glass and everything to keep that going. So those are just some quick examples of things that we're doing.
And so, Ron, how are these improvements, how are these infrastructure projects then going to trickle down to visitors of the parks, particularly Michiganders, but also those visiting the parks, and improve the experience of visiting Michigan's vast and varying parks all across the state?
Well, what we want to do, our goal is to create an atmosphere of a clean, safe, functional park that's relevant to people's needs and everybody's needs. And, so people will see improvements and in the park areas, and some of them will be very visible, such as we're working on some, parking lots or roadways, for example, that people will see. That'll be very visible. Some of them not so much. Water lines and sewer systems, they may not see as much readily, but certainly a bathroom or a shower building is something that people depend on and utilize every day or more than once a day when they're in a park camping or what have you. So there'll be a lot of things that people will see, but what we want are people to come and enjoy themselves and not have to think about, well, something is not really up to snuff or the water's not flowing as well as it should or what have you, that the experience is very seamless, and that's the objective.
We're joined by Ron Olson, Chief of Parks and Recreation for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. More information on everything happening in the Michigan DNR, including these infrastructure projects and other projects funded by the American Rescue Plan Act funds here in the state of Michigan, can be found on michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. And also, Ron, there's been some proposed legislation or discussion about legislation that would make residents of Michigan have preference in reservation of park resources such as campsites. Can you give us your opinion on that, or your opinion on that proposed legislation that would ultimately give Michiganders the first right to check out and reserve areas of their parks here in the Great Lakes state?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that like 88% of the people that camp and lodge in state parks are residents of the state. And so some of the parks that people quest to get into, like Ludington and Grand Haven and a few places like that are very, I'll call competitive to want to get in, they probably won't, even if that were done, probably wouldn't see much difference, because the residents of the state clearly are the higher majority of that. We're trying to, obviously, to keep balance and encourage tourism and so forth. We'll have to see how it all plays out, but it would provide a benefit for some, but the reality of it is that due to the proportions, there probably wouldn't be that much of an impact for the general person reserving the camp sites or cabins or what have you.
So what you're saying is that if if that is the case, and such a vast majority of people that are reserving areas in these parks are Michiganders themselves, then is there even any point in this proposed legislation going through and making that the rule here in the state of Michigan? If it's not going to be of any really real benefit, then what's the point?
Well, I guess there's some people believe that will help, and I'm not saying it wouldn't, because there's always a chance that it would make a difference, because this has been in place for as long as I've been here, and since the reservation system's been put into place, and it seems to work very fairly for everybody to that extent. But yeah, like I said, some of the areas that people get understandably frustrated about to get into, those will probably remain, because unless you're right on there when the 6-month window rolls around, or in a case of a cabin, they're 1 year out, you oftentimes the campsites get booked up very quickly in that first few hours of when the 6-month window opens. So that's the reality of it. So I'm because we haven't done it before, we don't know completely for sure, but I'm just saying the statistics are in the side of the probability of it making a big difference is probably would be a smaller impact than some might think.
We're joined by Ron Olson, the Chief of Parks and Recreation for Michigan's Department of Natural Resources. More information can be found on everything happening through the DNR at michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. And Ron, a few more minutes with you, and I want to give you a chance to speak on this. We've seen reports across many of the Great Lakes and even inland lakes over the past several weeks, including over the summer at some of Michigan's beloved parks on the water, incidents of people either running into hazards in the water or even being in situations where people have drowned in the water because they maybe are not following safety protocols to a T, or not taking the proper precautions as they go out on Michigan's waters. And of course, we want people to get out on the water in the state of Michigan. It's what brings people here. It's what people in the state love about the summer here in Michigan. But what are some of those critical safety issues or those critical safety precautions that maybe aren't being as followed as carefully as they probably should be by Michiganders and visitors that the DNR would like visitors and Michiganders going to our parks to keep in mind as we continue through this summer?
Well, I think that again, at our big beaches and along the Great Lakes, particularly Lake Michigan, that we do have and had adopted a long time ago the red, yellow, and green scenario, the virtual stoplight on reminders of the conditions when you come to one of the parks. And they do vary from park to park. Some might wonder because of the wind direction, and like Grand Haven and Holland, we have the navigational structures that were created by the Army Corps of Engineers that does create a different turbulence sometimes depending on the way the wind blows. And so we want people to pay attention to the guidelines. When in doubt, wear a life jacket. If you haven't been to a Great Lake beach before or haven't been there in a long time, it's a hot day, the water can be very cold, and it's always good to take extra precautions and to underinflate your expectation, meaning that try to be careful and slowly enter into the water and things like that. But be mindful of those flags, because when the red flag's flying, they're flying for a reason. It's because either rip currents are apparent or the waves are getting large. And we now have a new rule that was instituted this year where we'll have a double flag flying, which means that for temporarily you're prohibited from entering the water. And that's in cases of either contaminated water, debris in the water, or severe waves, meaning that waves, getting up to nearly 8 feet tall, or if there's presence of rip currents or other dangers that may not appear to be the case. So, and that's helped a lot. we really accelerated our public education. At some of the beaches, we have loudspeakers, but big signs when you come in. So when the red flags are up, even yellow, to heed the warning. But we would just say, when in doubt, wear a life jacket. If you have smaller kids, put a life jacket on them, and then you have peace of mind. And because these are natural resources, and that even in a designated swim area, that but in the areas particularly not, and people should not be swimming or diving or break walls. That's prohibited, but people do that or get into peril in that regard too. So, and also if somebody's on a paddleboard or a kayak, to be mindful of your capacity and make sure you have the proper life jackets and things, so that, and don't overdo your ability, because these lakes can be formidable.
Ron, we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, thank you. See you.
That is going to do it for this edition of the Oakland County and the Michigan Megacast. As always, you can keep up to date with our programs and find us on demand at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on all of our partnering TV, radio, and other media outlets. In the meantime, we'll go back to original programming across our network, and we'll come back with new episodes of the Megacast very soon.